Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with a short story from the gym. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Try to force me off a workout machine when I'm not finished? Have fun waiting even longer. So I go to a gym, and it has duplicates of most machines, but only one ab crunch, which means it's in use most of the time, so most people, like me, will use other machines until it becomes free. I finally get a chance to use it, and have a pre-planned set of reps that I want to carry out, and I'm almost at the end when I notice a guy come up to the machine, look at me, then start pacing up and down in front of the machine while looking at me. Now, I don't know if he thought I was taking too long or something. I'd only been on the machine 10 minutes, but he decided to keep pacing up and down, so I catch his eye. He says nothing and just stares at me. I figure he's trying to intimidate me off the machine with this display. I'm a small girl and he was a biggish guy, but I'm a jerk when it comes to people like that, so I thought, F it. You can't do that to me. And I restarted my set of reps and made him wait even longer for the machine. I can't stand people like that. If a machine is busy, just use another one. Hella petty, but some people need to learn that they can't behave like that towards other people. And our second story. And this is my 2-week notice. I worked at a local golf course for about 7 years, from when I was 13 to 20. When I'd first started there, my mother was the manager of all things food and beverage until that summer because she took on a different job. Working there for so long put me in line to be the new manager. However, I was not willing to take the position because I was enrolled in college and wouldn't have the time for it. And considering my mother worked 100-plus hour weeks sometimes in our busy season, I wasn't willing. So they brought in Addie to replace my mother as food and beverage manager, and I was another regular employee. The golf course also had a general manager who we'll call Mark. Mark sucks. He was creepy towards all the girls that worked there and had a terrible temper, one similar to a toddler. We never saw eye to eye on anything, especially his management style, and was always getting on my case even though I was the only person on the food and beverage side of things that knew what was up and how to do anything, including Addie. So this brings us to the story. I was working in our little restaurant serving our golf leagues that come in. One league in particular liked to stay really late, like 12 a.m. to 1 a.m., but I never really minded. I got along well with them, and I became good friends with a lot of the members. And they were always buying beer and shots, so there was never much of an issue with it. When Addie started there, Mark decided to change up our dining room policies to close the restaurant at 10:30 p.m. This personally really aggravated me. They were paying customers, and I was happy to serve them. I was the only one that was usually serving them, but Mark kept going on about labor costs, which if anyone reading this knows anything about serving, I wasn't making much hourly and was relying on tips to make money. So they put this into place, and I tell Mark it's his responsibility to tell the league they have to leave at 10:30 and not me. He didn't. And guess what? The league members were PO'd. First mistake. Addie would not often, or honestly never, stay to help with the leagues, but was adamant about the new hours. As she's about to head out for the day, she tells me that I'll be training 2 girls in the restaurant that night. We have about 80 extremely needy golfers in the restaurant at once on this night in particular. I barely had time to train one, but she did not stay to help out with that. Looking back on it, it was definitely not my responsibility to train anyone either. But I was willing to help out as she was still getting adjusted to the job, and she knew that and took advantage of that. Second mistake. Then mentions to me that if I'm not clocked out by 10:50 p.m., then I will not be paid for any work after the fact. Third mistake. I ended up training one of the girls on our POS computer and told her she was done for the day and that she can clock out, and continued to train the other girl for the rest of the evening. So when the leagues left at 10:30, there was food on the floor, bathrooms weren't cleaned, trash was not taken out, the tables were moved from their normal resting place, and their drawer wasn't counted. I told the girl I was training to move the tables, and I counted the drawer. Well, it's 10:50 now, and I'm not working for free, so we clocked out and left. Could I have done more? Absolutely, but I needed to prove a point. The next morning, I had many missed calls from Mark and Addie. I didn't have to come in for 2 days, so I just let them keep calling. So on the next shift day I finally called Mark back. He told me to come in for a meeting with him and Addie. When I get there, he gives me a story about how he had to come in and clean everything up with Addie And why would I ever do something like that? I told him that Addie not only had me training 2 people on our busiest night of the week alone, but also had to be out at 10:50 or I was told I wasn't being paid. After going back and forth about how Addie was just kidding and I shouldn't take things so seriously, I finally had enough of Mark and his antics. I told them I was putting in my 2 weeks, and the looks on their faces was as if I'd shot someone right in front of them. It was awesome. I continued to work for the next 2 weeks, doing everything I was supposed to and training Addie on any little detail I could think of before I left. After my 2 weeks was up, I ended up getting calls from Addie and Mark all the time because nothing was going right. I was asked again by Mark to take Addie's position on, and Addie was calling me, telling me how impossible Mark is to deal with. It was truly beautiful to watch all the chaos unfold even after I left. Addie ended up quitting a month after because her and Mark couldn't get along. Clubs like this are a cash cow. If you run them well and treat the clients well, you'll do fine. But abuse the customers? You'll crash and burn. Hard. And our last story. Car dealership screws me over. I closed down their business. Roughly 14 years ago, I was a naive kid and went to a car dealership to buy my first used Honda. I had enough money saved for a down payment, but the stereotypical used car salesman upgraded me to another, more expensive car. It had just been traded in earlier that day, so it was still in the service shop. I got the service checkoff sheet claiming all the work that was done and the main one being brakes replaced. I take it home, and after a few days of adjusting to the new car, I notice that my brakes are squeaking. I call the dealership and they tell me over the phone that Hondas do that. Made a record of time, date, name of rep. I asked around and sure enough they confirmed what the dealership had told me. Of course, over the next 4 months, the brake noise upgraded from a squeak to a squeal, and by the end of the 4th month, a grinding was heard. I bring it into the dealership and they tell me, your brakes are completely worn to the nub. You have maybe 5% left at best. That'll be $490 to repair the issue. I speak to the service manager, SM, who was no help. I find the salesman and anyone else involved with my sale, and none of them can help me as the checklist states brakes were replaced. I've never heard of brakes going out in less than 5,000 miles. I finally get a hold of the general manager, GM, who flat out tells me, son, you're a kid. Guys like you race fast and brake hard. I've replaced brakes at 2,000 miles before. He won't do a thing for me. They replaced the brakes, but one of them isn't tightened on well, and on my way home, the brake pad falls off its housing. It's still attached by tangling, and I call a tow truck on the dealership's expense. I have the guy take the ultra-long way back as they bill by the mile. I pick it up the next day, and nothing said about it. I sulk for 6 months, telling my story to all that care to hear me. Finally, a friend of a friend hears me out and is familiar with what to do. He helps me to write a letter to the Better Business Bureau and notify news agencies. I'm writing help me articles to newspapers, even call up talk radio stations for advice. It takes several weeks and nearly 60 envelopes later. I had stacks upon stacks of letters going out to various agencies and companies. 2 months go by, and I had gotten a few news agencies that were interested, but the big one was the BBB. My caseworker, Chad, said they will do an investigation and informs me this isn't the first time said dealership has done this before. Mine was the first where detailed records were kept. I had additional maintenance records going into the same dealership as well as secondary opinions. Over a year had gone by since I bought my car, and I take it back to the dealership for the last of my scheduled warranty maintenance. Before I do so, I go to a BBB trusted mechanic and have him confirm my brakes are good. 9,500 miles and nearly brand new still. At the dealership, I avoid everyone that might recognize me and I speak directly to the mechanic. He does the last of the warranty maintenance and I ask him to check my brakes, knowing full well that the service manager in GM had written notes about me for future reference. Chad warned me of this. He confirms what Chad had told me would happen. Your brakes are almost worn out. You must ride them hard as they were replaced about 8 months ago. You should probably get them replaced again. I ask the guy to write all this down and he refuses to make it on the official paperwork, but caves on dealership letterhead instead. Name, date, time, the works. I fax this information to Chad, and sometime later I get a phone call from the GM of the dealership. I don't remember all of the half-hour-long conversation, but he was attempting to bribe me with free service, vehicle upgrade with a pay-the-difference catch, blah, 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 if I would retract the unfair accusation I made against him in his store. I was milking him for all it was worth, and finally said, you know, being that I drive my car like a typical kid, I'd be thrilled if the dealership replaced my nearly new tires, brakes, and oil and transmission fluid. I'm hard on cars after all. He was verbally PO'd at my attempt to rub what he said in his face. He hung up, claiming I was being unreasonable. I never did get my refund for the brake job. I never should have paid for. It took 3 years and several more complaints from other customers, but the dealership was forced to close down and sell. Chad tells me it was mostly because of my detailed record keeping and persistence that led to the dealership going under. Good stuff. Crooked salesmen like that deserve to get shut the hell down. I'm a bit disappointed you didn't get a payout. However, justice was served. You did good. You should feel good. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.